Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with a special guest from Scotland, Alison Smith. And she's here today to share with us her new book, Can't See the Wood for the Trees, Landscaping Your Life to Get Back on Track. So if you think this book is about landscaping, think again. It's all about moving your life forward in positive, transformative ways. Now, Alison Smith is a speaker, coach, facilitator, and trainer who has developed the process of landscaping your life as a method to help people get unstuck and get back into their flow. She works with teams as well as individuals in business contexts and outside. Since her own personal transformation 20 years ago, Alison has founded unconventional tools that allow us to become more effective and powerful at bypassing the blocks and resistance that hold us back. Alison's method creates transformational changes that allow us to move forward in our lives in an empowered and enlightened way. So join me in welcoming to the show, Alison Smith.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Oh, what a pleasure it is to have you here. And what a fabulous book. I mean, it is so packed full of information. Oh, my goodness, I can't wait to start talking about it.
Thank you. Great to hear.
Well, and so I have to ask you, what started you on this path? Because people know you. I mean, you're a speaker, you're a coach, facilitator, trainer. I mean, you do it all. But what started you on this path to help people get unstuck and get back into their flow?
I think it was my own stuckness, really. So I, like a lot of people, was a bit unconscious when I was married, and it only became very conscious and awake once I split up from my husband. I didn't realise that there was more to life and more to me, really. I mean, and that's nothing about the husband. It's more about who I was before and who I allowed myself to become, really. So as soon as I had a bit more time, suddenly my brain went, oh my God, there's all that information out there, and sort of went on a bit of a fest of gathering up neuro-linguistic programming, Enneagram, Peruvian shaman, you name it.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's interesting how we all follow these different spiritual paths, but they lead to, I mean, you obviously are really good at what you do, and it's easy to see with the book that you've written just what kind of impact that's going to make on people's lives. And I love seeing the path that people take to get them to where they are today. So I applaud you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, and so, when you wrote this book, was there anyone specific involved, or is it something that just kind of developed over a period of time for you?
Oh, I know. It was quite a solo activity, really. Me and nature. So I wrote a lot of the book out in nature. And so, it was very much a plan. Let's get out there. And then the plan went out the window, because as soon as I got out in nature, what I thought I was going to write is not what was written, because nature's patterns had other things, as I share in the book. I think I've come to this beach to write about the sea, and I'm writing about mountains and molehills.
Well, and, I feel like your book, and correct me if I'm wrong, I felt like it can really apply to anybody that, kind of feels maybe they're in a part in their life where maybe it's not quite what they were expecting, or they feel stuck, or they feel like they just need a new direction.
Perfect. And I think landscaping your life as a process, using nature as our coach, has been around for 20 years. But I think writing it in the way it has, in terms of sharing it via the phrases that we use, making mountains out of molehills, stuck in a rut, makes it much more applicable and approachable and easy for people to dip in and out of, whether they're familiar with self-help, whether they're familiar with some of my own beliefs. It doesn't matter. It's quite a practical approach, as you say, to solving or giving more insight to a situation you'd perhaps like to feel differently about or take a different action about.
Yeah. Well, and so when we look at the metaphor of nature, do you use that because just your own personal experience with like being in nature and kind of feeling more grounded and having everything come together? Or was that done in an approach to kind of move more people to getting more outside and being in nature more than what we do now?
Oh, well, I think it was a very logical, so for me it looks like it was a logical thing. I started using gardening as a metaphor for something at work, and then it got bigger. But I think now, looking back on the journey, then, yeah, it feels deeper than that. I did a lot of shamanic stuff. I spent 7 days in at Ayers Rock, Uluru in Australia. So I think nature grabbed me really and let me logically think that, oh, well, this is a great idea. But I think nature's bigger than that, really. And, yeah.
Yeah, well, because your approach is different, which makes it really stand out. Because when we look at nature as this metaphor and then also incorporating that into our daily routine and our daily lives, it makes it seem like a simple, not simple, but a really journey that kind of can be easier for people to move through.
I think so, because it's also really easily accessible. But people can, if they can't look out of the window and see nature, they can perhaps look at photographs, or they can go on the internet, or they can open a magazine. And there's a number of different techniques in the book that all enable you to do it. Yes, I would encourage you to go out into nature, but you can do it sitting at home. If you can't get out, you don't feel like going out, then you can do a technique just sitting on your sofa and connecting in with nature.
Yeah. Well, and some people live in concrete jungles like in LA or New York where green spaces are very minimal. So being able to be in nature, there's not a whole lot of it. So it's nice that there's options for people as well if they don't have that availability.
Yeah, I mean, the options about just looking at a video. So a lot of the Facebook posts that I put up there are just, here's a video from somebody else's page, actually quite often. Just put to the back of your mind, watch the issue you've got, put it to the back of your mind, and watch this. I think today's was an eagle flying. And it's just to observe nature from that eagle's point of view, and then to just get some insight to your particular situation.
Yeah, and
it's that simple. But yes, I suppose what I have done is brought a number of different ways of doing it. So you can do it in your head. You can imagine a landscape and construct a landscape, I suppose, or a different landscape. So yes, there are a number of different ways of using nature, but the simplest would be to go out into it. And if you can't go out into it, have a look at a video on the internet, which we now have access to more easily than perhaps when I first started using the process.
Yeah. Well, in your book, you talk about molehills, and you referenced that just a little bit ago. What are those? And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that for our listeners.
In what respect? The molehills for me are anything where we're making something potentially, or the molehills are the solutions. The mountains are what are the problems. The mountains are the things that we're saying, we're stuck about. And I'm suggesting that the molehills are the mechanisms we have for making those mountains feel smaller. Because all you need to do is shift your thinking in your brain from thinking it's difficult to thinking it's easy. And you open up the door to finding solutions. And so from a logical point of view, then I'm saying that the molehills are things like finding motivation. And there's one of the chapters is metaphorically about finding motivation. Another might be about being more understanding yourself better. And others might be about removing what's holding you back. But they're the logical molehills. A lot of the book really tackles it from a very metaphorical point of view. So it's not about having to logically understand, what is it that's setting me back? It's just by allowing nature to take you on a journey to bypass those blocks, to be able to move from not being able to see a solution to somehow realizing there is a solution that emerges.
Yeah. Well, and your book provides options for people to kind of help them if they can't see a solution. Because sometimes, when people are really having a tough time or really depressed, solutions don't seem like that's even a possible thing. And so you even start with something like, get out of bed. It's like as simple as that. And get excited. Make some changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing when I was writing the book was, of course, I sort of lived out the chapters. So sometimes it was a case of, quick, I don't... Stuck in a Rut was a long chapter to write because I sort of had to live the saying, which then made it difficult to write the saying, to write the chapter.
Well, and that seems like such a topic for people nowadays. You hear so many people saying, I feel like I'm stuck in a rut, or they need coaches to help them, to get them unstuck because they're just in a place where they can't kind of move past.
Well, and I think that's part of where the book's coming from, because the book's coming from the fact that if you can use that phrase, stuck in a rut, or can't see the wood for the trees, going round in circles, that actually a part of you does know the answer, because the answer lies in the words you're using. So if you can't see the wood for the trees, the answer lies in the wood. And so as much as we use it to describe being stuck, I'm inviting you to go, but that's the answer. The answer's in the words you're using, but we need to go a bit metaphorical with it. It's as if your little inner wisdom is going, the answer's in the wood, the answer's in the woods. And then it's a case of going to the wood and going, well, what would I do in a wood? Well, unless you own the wood, you might not cut stuff down, but you might follow the path, or you might get a map out. And it's about exploring all of the things that you do within within a real wood, and to come up with a vast number of solutions, and to keep going until you've sort of run out of solutions, and to then go, well, what do each one of those mean in relation to my current situation? And one of them is likely to be the difference that makes a difference.
That's so true. And your book provides so many different different options and resources for people to work through when they're stuck and they can't see the woods, and we've got all these, they're feeling bogged down or feeling like they're out on a limb. You give all these great resources for them to use right there, going, I can get through this, I can make it through.
Yes, I think I've put every every technique possible known to man, as far as using the metaphor, into the book. It is interesting as I now reflect, because every chapter offers a different view of how to use the process, and that's what I hope really, is that it gives people a toolkit that they can use, not just for these sayings, but any saying that they use. And then to go beyond that into using, landscapes more generally as mechanisms for helping them find solutions and getting back on track.
And I know a lot of people really need that right now. I mean, getting back on track sometimes is like the most important thing. So I know there's a portion in your book you talk about anchoring a positive landscape to feel safe, secure, and happy. I love that, and I would love for you to share a little bit about that to our listeners.
Okay, so the idea really is, it comes back to Pavlov's dog, that we can teach ourselves to see something and have a particular reaction to it, and therefore you only have to think about somebody that you love, and automatically, they're not here, but automatically you can feel all of those positive feelings that you have for that person. And you can imagine seeing, a picture of somebody who you perhaps don't get on with and not having those feelings. And all this process does is use that anchoring, it's called, process that we already do day in, day out, in order to be able to shift our mood at any point in time. And so it would be about picking a landscape that you have positive emotions towards. Now, the important thing is it's a bit like an antidote. So it might be that it's not a good idea to pick a landscape that you associate with being asleep, or, you know, oh, I like that beach from that holiday, but I spent it sort of on the lounger in the sun, because that's the energy that you're going to get when you think about that landscaping future. So it's about what's the prescription I want. Oh, I'd like to feel positive, I'd like to feel uplifted, but I'd like to feel energized. So once you've got your prescription of what it is you'd like to feel, then it's about coming up with one, or possibly, I mean, in the book it just talks about one, but you could come up with 2 or 3 landscapes that give you that feeling, or those feelings. And then it becomes about anchoring it. It's about looking at the picture and getting those feelings, and even perhaps saying out loud that place. So it might be for me Bamborough Beach, and I'm looking at that picture, and I'm saying Bamborough Beach, and I can feel all of that, and I've got my eyes closed as I'm now doing it. I'm feeling all of what I feel when I'm there, and then as that feeling starts to subside, I open my eyes and I sort of change what I'm thinking about. Because the idea is to set up a really, really strong anchor that as soon as you think of, in my example, Bamborough Beach, that I'm there. And that I have access. It's as if I'm there. So I suddenly, all of those feelings that I have when I'm there, I've got with me. And you would do that exercise 3 or 4 times until all you have to do is say or think about, in my example, Bamborough Beach, and you have access to those feelings.
Well, and
now you can do that over a period, so you could actually get a stone and anchor it to that stone, so that every time you think about that landscape, you look at the stone, look away again after sometimes about 10 seconds, because you can't really hold that really juicy, lovely feeling for long. So it might be only 10 seconds. And then you look away from the stone, and then it might be that you go, oh, well, actually, I'd like to add a little bit of, and again, I'm staying in England, really, but a little bit of Castlereagh stone circle will go into there. So I bring that to mind, and I look at the stone as I'm bringing that to mind. And over time, that stone then comes to represent all of those brilliant feelings. So that when you're having a bad day, that you can pick up that stone or look at that stone, and suddenly you're able to access that feeling. And yeah, it's called anchoring. So if you looked up on anchoring on, well, obviously there's something in the book about it, but yeah, as far as the internet's concerned, if you looked up anchoring feelings and NLP, you'd actually be able to find out more about how to do that.
Well, your book was a great resource for that, and you can see where you really have that anchor in positive, and that positive feeling of secure and happy.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of times we go through our day and it's easy for people to get kind of thrown into the weeds, you know. It's like, oh, I'm doing fine, and then something happens and we're thrown into the weeds, you know. So being able to have a positive anchor, I mean, what a great thing that is.
Well, and also what a wonderful phrase, thrown into the weeds, you know, from a from a landscaping your life point of view. I could take us on a little journey about, what would you do if you were thrown into the weeds?
A friend of mine uses that comment all the time, and it just means you're kind of, you know, off on a different path, not where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, although you see, weeds that make great compost. So there's something about turning it into something very positive rather than it being automatically a negative thing. But
I like that. You know, I'm going to have to use that next time when I chat with my friend. But it's, you know, it's important to have these things that can bring us back to a place of security and happiness. And your book has so many ways of just getting people where they can kind of, you know, find a place where they feel right in the world. You know.
Well, I think so, and I think that there is a story in there of somebody who was aiming for perfection. So they were striving and not getting there. And actually, what they found in nature, and this is where I love going out into nature, because you can't fail to find what works for you. And in this instance, and there is a picture in the book, she walks into a wild meadow. And there is no perfection in nature, and yet there is at the same time. There isn't anything that, and not everything is the same. And I think that's one of the things I like about nature in terms of everything. A tree doesn't try to be anything other than a tree, but no one tree is the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, nature's truth, the wisdom of nature, helps us accept ourselves for who we are today and be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. And allow us to just be present in what, and allow us to be unique. I mean, how great is that? The trees don't compete with another tree going, well, that one's taller and has greener leaves.
No, and there's a brilliant poem by, I think it's David Wagoner, that's called Lost. And he even says that the trees aren't lost. So it was a real different take on Can't See the Wood for the Trees, because he suggests the trees aren't lost. So if you can't see the wood for the trees, sort of spend a bit of time with the tree, because the tree knows where it is.
Yeah, it kind of brings.
Which had I known about that, that would have definitely gone in the book. But that was subsequently when I've been talking to somebody about the book, and they said, "Oh, you need to know about this poem."
Well, and what a beautiful poem, and I love your book with the analogies that it brings. You also talk about being a fish out of water, and I'd love for you to share with our listeners, your thoughts on being a fish out of water.
Oh, this is where the book was a revelation to me when I wrote it, because I'd sit down and I'd think, right, yep, fish out of water, and then of course as soon as I started writing it, I realised that, because normally when we're saying we're fish out of water, we're doing something that is uncomfortable, and everybody says, oh no, it's okay, your comfort zone will expand, just give it a bit of time, you'll be fine. But as I wrote it and had to accept that if I was a fish out of water, then what people are telling me, oh, you'll be fine, is quite incorrect. I am not, as a fish, going to be fine if I am out of water, unless I'm that odd amphibian one that enables me to. And so for me, as I wrote the chapter, it was about, absolutely, this is the one saying where we need to get ourselves safe, we need to get ourselves comfortable and confident before we try and get ourselves out of the water. So actually, the chapter suggests, go back into the water and think about where it is you're heading. Can you get out of the water? If you're going from water A to water B, can you do it differently in order to not die? And I know that sounds a bit melodramatic, but I can understand now that if somebody is using that phrase, why it is such a struggle, and why when somebody says, oh, you just need to expand your comfort zone, is unhelpful.
Yeah.
And I've said that to people. As a coach, I'll be going, oh, we just need to. But now, if somebody's using that phrase, okay, how can we make you safe? How can we make you feel as if your own life is not being threatened? And then let's come up with an action plan after that.
And that's where you have a different approach than a lot of other people. And what I really appreciate about your book, Can't See the Wood for the Trees, because it's just a different perspective that I thought worked really well.
Thank you. And I think, the coach in me sometimes would actually try and argue, but there is something about I have to honour what nature is presenting as far as the metaphor is concerned. So I can't have. So when I wrote the final chapter that's about going with the flow, yes, I know that salmon go up against, but most of the time, if you are a drop of water, you need to go with the flow. And so it's about following those basic laws of nature, if you will, to say, I have to honour that. What insight does honouring the fact that autumn comes after summer?
Yeah.
Or that, you can't, that high tide follows low tide, etc., etc. There are laws that we can then apply to our daily life. And if we're using phrases that include nature, then there's a part of us that actually understands that. It's the premise of the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very helpful book. My goodness. What's like when people come to you, because I know you do the coaching, you've got to be so busy. I'm sure you have a waiting list. But for those lucky few that are able to work with you personally, when you work with people coaching, is it typically, are you seeing like a typical theme that usually you see over and over again when people, maybe they're stuck, maybe they're feeling fearful, insecure? What are some of the common things that you see?
I think a lot of it, and quite a few of them are women, are about speaking their truth, about being happy with who they are rather than trying to be somebody who they think they ought to be. Because I don't know whether, I don't think it's particular to women per se, but we try and be, the roles we put on. And, in business, then a lot of people are coming to me and, they're trying to be who they think they should be in business. And it's my own journey on that respect is realizing that, my first ever boss, my recollection is of being told not to be giggly and me when I did a talk, and yet all the other people came up to me and said, "Oh, breath of fresh air, thank you." And my journey has been about realizing that if we are who we are, people get us, because then they know that they're getting the honest person. So I think, is it the fact that that's my journey, therefore I attract people that have got those sorts of issues going on to keep reminding me of that fact?
Well, but isn't it true? I mean, you can't take someone a place where you haven't been yourself. It's kind of one of those discussions. So if to be a coach in anything usually means that you've really gone through that path and you know it well because you've been there, you've done that.
Yes, and I suppose one of the reasons that I've not sort of left business necessarily is because I do think that we can be ourselves in business and we don't have to, leave our humanity at the door. And so people look at me and go, "Oh, but you haven't. You've brought yourself to work. You're here training us with all of your humanity." It's like, yeah, of course it can be done. It's not just for me to do, it's for everybody to do. And I think that's one of the things I've learned, really, is the fact that sometimes we don't have to be there teaching any of this or coaching any of this. If we just be ourselves, that people just see that and go, "Oh, well, if they can do it, so can I." And then it acts as a role model and change happens, as a ripple effect, really.
Well, and so often, when we talk about, carrying certain roles, we can carry the role of a parent. We're supposed to be, like I have friends that, their dads were attorneys or granddads, so they're attorneys. They hate it. Just different people that get into different jobs because they think they should, or it's something that they figured would, at the time when they're looking for employment, that would be the type to go for. So it's interesting what motivates people, and then also what brings people to a point of personal awakening where they're like, "You know what, I can't live this lie anymore. I just want to be me." And your book helps them kind of to move through that.
Thank you. Yeah, well, and that's the aim. When I first started all of this, I suppose titled what I was doing as giving people passion in life. And it's sort of come now round to that whole, although landscaping your life is the process, is about helping people get back on track, or whether it's unstuck. But yes, it is that whole turning up 100% as us and being happy with that.
Yeah.
And then that enables us to actually dream the dream, do what we wanted to do, do the difference, or make the difference in the world we want to see. Because we're not trying to say, "Oh, that's not possible. Who am I to do that?"
Yeah. Well, and how true that is, because it only takes one person to make a difference,
Yeah, and I have to keep reminding myself about the book. I had to hear, as I said that, I'm going, "Yes, Alison, and are you listening to that about the book?"
Well, dear. It's very helpful. It is packed full of resources and information, which is great because, I got to tell you, there have been so many times, like, you'll listen to it could be a self-help coach or a speaker or what have you, and here's a piece of information, okay? And you can hear that piece of information like 20 times. And it's not until the 21st time that someone brings it in a different way that you actually hear it and go like, gosh, okay, that makes sense. I could use that in my life.
Yeah.
So the book has got
and I think we have to be ready, but you're right. I think there's which is why I love metaphor, because metaphor makes it easier for people because I'm not telling them, nature's suggesting to somebody, and I think sometimes that's easier to hear. Says she from a very control freaky, don't you tell me what to do point of view. So it works with me when nature kindly nudges me to think differently about a situation than a friend telling me that perhaps I should behave differently.
Yeah, well, and your metaphors, you live them. I mean, there's a fabulous picture of you on media.
Sorry.
Of you in a rut, and there's mud and water, and you are in this rut, and you're just like reveling in it. It's like, bring it on,
Yeah. But I was laughing at the one because I thought you were going to mention the picture of me with my head in the sand. Which,
I did not see that one yet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, there's a picture of me with a head in the sand where when I was reflecting on the book, perhaps we should have got a professional picture rather than, but it didn't make sense it made sense in the writing to leave with the picture that was taken at that moment in time when a poor man was walking past. I found a hole in the sand, man walking past with the dog, and I goes up to him and said, can you take a picture? And he's expecting, I don't know what he was expecting. He wasn't expecting me to put my head in the sand and for him to then have to press the button when my head was in the sand.
Well, but, it worked out fabulous, and I can't wait to see that. Well, and Alison, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your book, Can't See the Wood for the Trees?
You can find me on landscapingyourlife.co.uk. But currently, I'm very lucky that if you do hashtag landscapingyourlife on most of the platforms, so hashtag landscapingyourlife on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, you'll find me there.
YouTube, all of that. Well, and for our listeners that don't know, we are lucky to have you with us here today. You're calling in from Scotland. How exciting is that? To share your wisdom, across the pond, as they say. So we'd like to just thank you for taking the time to be here with us, Alison, and share your wisdom and insights with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alison. It has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Can't See the Wood for the Trees, Landscaping Your Life to Get Back on Track. Now, you can purchase Alison's book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and also don't forget your indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.